Hi, I'm Paul Morris, host of Radical Wealth Plan. I'm a New York Times best-selling author, prolific investor, and award-winning entrepreneur dedicated to helping you find and fulfill your personal vision of wealth by investing in real estate. So whether you're new to the game, an investment professional, or a real estate titan, join us to be entertained, educated, and inspired. This is Radical Wealth Plan, a new podcast presented by Entrepreneur Media. Akash Saini, welcome to Radical Wealth Plan.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you, Paul.
I know you've had some significant time in the commercial real estate world, primarily in multifamily.
That's right.
And so you're also in a very expensive area.
Yes.
Relative, right? I mean,
Yes.
relatively, you're in a very expensive area.
It's a good thing.
Okay, that's good. As an investor, how are you going to help me in an expensive area? Because why not? I'm coming to you. We live here. Why not invest in Texas where it's less expensive? Detroit. I hear good things about Detroit.
Yeah.
So why invest here?
You just said it right now. You said, I live here, right?
Okay.
So I have to know what your needs are. So if you're living here, most likely I have to think, okay, are you focused mostly on the return on your investment, or are you mostly focused on, just having your property be more tangible, right? So we have clients who have their own preference. So I have clients who said, you know what, I just want a property locally here so I can physically go touch the property. So I have clients who said, I don't care, Akash, where I invest. I look for the number. What is my bank account going to show, right? Or we have people somewhere a little bit in between.
What's your advice to the person that's, I just want a good investment?
Again, you have to define what a good investment is to them, right? So what is a good investment to yourself?
Well,
so
I want to protect the downside, so I don't want to lose money, of course. And, obviously I want some appreciation over time.
Sure.
And I also want some cash flow. So,
got it. So in that respect, I would say stick with cities, right? It doesn't matter where you are in the United States. Stick with cities that are main cities, right? You're not going to, for example, like Bakersfield, relatively local to over here.
Right.
So now you're sticking with mostly in Los Angeles, or maybe just the outskirts of Los Angeles, right? But you have to measure that as well. So if you're looking for good appreciation and cash flow, you want to have the best of both worlds. I would say now, okay, buy a property in Pacoima or Canoga Park.
And for a national podcast, Pacoima it's the outskirts of Los Angeles.
Exactly. So it's the outskirts of Greater Los Angeles. Or let's say you take Texas, for example, right? Actually, that's a bad example. I don't know much about Texas. Or Indiana.
Okay.
Right. So let's say you go to Indiana and then you buy a property in Indianapolis. I been there just 2 years ago, and the economy just booming like crazy. So I would buy a property just on the outskirts of Indianapolis itself. Right. So that means, there's going to be more money that's going to keep on coming into that particular sub economy, and you're going to be fine. So versus now I go invest in Bakersfield when the recession hits, when things go down.
Bakersfield is a smaller city not connected to a major metropolis. So your advice really is stick to where you have at least some connection.
That's right.
To the major metropolis. And then also we're going to the outskirts because I've asked you for a balance of appreciation and cash flow.
That's correct. Analogy I can share with you is like a flower, right? When a flower blooms, if you go to the right in the middle, it's going to be very hard for you to afford that particular spot in the city. But if you just look around that flower right on the edges, there may be some good nuggets. Another example would be if we're looking at Los Angeles. I'm not sure if people are going to be familiar with Glendale.
Sure.
Right.
Probably not, but
probably not. So
that's a closer suburb, right?
Right. So in Glendale, if you go in the downtown area, very expensive. But if you look towards South Glendale, you may find very good opportunities. Why? Because it's bordering to Silver Lake, Echo Park, and all those other cities, right? To downtown.
You're seeing I almost view it as like a heat map. So
Okay.
I'll go and I'll look at a city, and even something as populated as Los Angeles, you've got your real, like Silver Lake's a hot spot, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe Glendale is a hot spot, but somewhere in between there, the heat gets lower.
Right.
And you have to have some economic engine that pushes that growth outward.
That's right. And again, this is investment. So focusing on a multifamily, now I go with the same example in Glendale. If I buy a property in the outskirts, let's say South Glendale, how much more rent difference is there going to be that I can collect from the tenant? Maybe 100 to 200 max, right? So now you times that by 12 months per unit, whatever it may be. It's not that big of a deal, right? So you may get a bang for your buck, in other words, if you're looking on the outskirts.
Right. So in other words, the cost of the property is going to be much more significantly less in terms of cost to purchase, whereas the rentability, because it's still close, you're not getting exactly as much rent, but you're getting close to the amount of rent. Very close for a price that's less than maxed out like you would in the central area.
And you have to understand, investors who do own right in the hub, sometimes they don't want to do major renovations to the unit because they're spoiled. I'm going to get the premium rent anyway.
Right.
So now if you do a major renovation to your unit who's on the outskirts, the tenant may be willing to say, you know what, I'll pay the extra $100 over here for this unit. Or I'll drive the little bit extra 5 minutes that I need to drive, or 10 minutes or whatever. Right. And I get a premium.
So now you're looking at I'll make up the numbers, but let's say you're looking at a 2-bedroom in, right in the center of Glendale, $1,500, and it should be ramshackle, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, very good. Yeah.
And then if I go a little outside of the downtown area, maybe I buy ramshackle, but I fix it up now, and I get it for a lot less money. Now I'm getting very close because, now as an end user, I've got to go look at the ramshackle 2-bedroom, which is very convenient to work, versus the really, really nice one that's 10 minutes extra drive, something like that.
Exactly. Actually, Los Angeles is a different beast a little bit, right? So that could work for other cities.
Oh yeah.
But in here in local, of course, the average rent is like for 2-bedroom in Glendale is going to be between $2,700 to $3,000, right?
Okay. Yeah. So you're giving me real numbers. I was going to make up numbers. So $2,700 to $3,000, and that's going to get you a decent 2-bedroom or super
that's going to get
nice?
you a renovated 2-bedroom.
Renovated,
right?
2-bedroom.
It's not a new building,
right?
So a new building could go up to 20 or 3,200,
right? Gotcha.
Right? Is very high. So now,
but the point being is going right outside of that,
you can collect almost the same rent.
Yeah, if you've got something that's just as nice or a little bit nicer.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and that's also a great strategy.
Yeah.
If I'm looking to hire somebody to do, I want an investment property.
Okay.
What do you bring to the table that's unique? Why would I look to you to represent me maybe on the buy side, and then also I guess we'll ask for the sell side, but let's start with the buy side.
I mean, one thing I know for a fact that me and my team have is that we have one person completely dedicated in the background checking every property that hits the market. See, if you're an independent broker, we use the word kind of loosely because really I'm an agent.
Right.
But in the commercial realm, we call ourselves brokers, right?
Sure.
Because we're brokering a deal. But we have a dedicated person who's taking a look at every property that hits the market, right? Every single day, every single moment. So if you're independent, not working with a team, you may not have that luxury as a buyer to have that one agent be just focused on looking for a deal for you, right?
So I would have a certain criteria, like, here's how much I can afford, or here's the type of property.
Yeah.
Or what if I just wanted to invest? Would you give me an idea? What do you think is the best investment for me?
Yeah. I mean, depends on how much cash you have available, right?
Right.
So that's the first thing.
Right.
And then the second thing is going to be, what's the goal? Right? Are you looking for long-term appreciation, or are you looking for just immediate cash flow? Right? So that's going to come with its own territory. So if you're looking for immediate cash flow, you're looking at a property, let's say buying somewhere in the valley, like Northern Valley, right? Most likely is going to be like Pacoima, for example, or Tahanga. So of course, the tenant base is going to be so-so, but you have a better cash flow. Now, if you want appreciation for a long term, now we're looking at along the 101 corridor. So anywhere like Sherman Oaks, Encino.
And the price there is going to be high enough that it drives down the yield.
Yes.
And so I'm getting less cash on cash, but because it's in a more prime area, we're looking for a higher upside. Is that
That's right? That's right. I actually have an investor. I didn't understand this when I got into the business. He was talking about just buying all these properties in Palmdale. I'm like, why? Like, why would you go to that area? Like, LA invested a lot of money in that area, but when they built the jail there, everything kind of, went south. But he said, Akash, because every property that I buy in Palmdale, the tenants get a Section 8 voucher, right? Or they're funded by the government, to keep it simple. So I rather to have a continuous paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, and I don't have to manage. My management company has to manage.
Interesting, because a lot of times I hear investors say that they want to stay away from Section 8.
Yeah.
Do you see that as well?
People, again, it depends on what their goal is, right? So if they're self-managing, then it may become a little bit tricky, because you don't want to deal with the city. Anytime government gets involved, what happens? You have to a lot of
red tape.
Exactly. So it depends, like how much of a risk that you're willing to take. That's one, and how much of a flex that you have, right? How much work that you can devote towards if you're a doctor, for example, or an engineer, or you have a 9-to-5 job and you're looking for a multifamily property. You're going to be too occupied to deal with the city and to deal with Section 8. You just want something straightforward. Right.
But also interesting to hear you say that, you do service clients that are specifically looking for Section 8, because Section 8 at the end of the day, you're going to get paid.
Yes.
Because it's a government program.
Right. Recently, however, as we know, the city has been drying up for the funds.
Yes.
But with that being said, it's California.
Yeah.
All the people who are homeless in New York. My wife, she's actually in the psychology world. So she worked for LA Housing Family. She worked for a lot of these nonprofit organizations. And what she always tells me, that it doesn't matter what year, what time, whenever it is, all these people who are homeless in the cold areas, they all come over here, right?
Right.
So meaning that this state is going to continue to receive this funding from the government, if not from the local, but from the federal. They're always going back and forth with it. But what are you going to do? So I don't see the money drying up necessarily, because what else? Otherwise, the city will becomes like Gotham, right? I don't see it going that far.
What about analysis of a deal? So I want to hire a realtor, but to do an investment for me, but I want to make sure that the analysis is solid. How solid are you with the analysis, and what does that look like?
I have to put myself in the shoes of the investor. Every time we buy a deal, I say we, because I'm partnering up with the client as a buyer to really see if this is going to be prosperous for them or not, right? Because what happens if I do a bad job, they're not going to come to sell the property with me later when it comes time to sell.
Right.
And the whole reason you're investing, you may buy 10 units, you may buy 4 units, but the goal here is to add on to your portfolio.
Right.
So you may want to do a 1031 exchange from 10 units to, 15 units.
Right.
Or maybe 10 units to a triple net, right? You want to grow your money. So if I do the job correctly for you once, then it's going to be a repeat business. So
you're going to be my advisor along the way?
Of course, I have to.
So it's not just this. It's not just I'm going to come to you with, hey, this is how much money. It's the first thing you ask me, which I appreciate. Because you're going to try and figure out what I can afford. Then you're going to ask me what my goals are. Do I want long-term appreciation? Do I want cash flow immediately? Right. You're going to deal with that, and then act as my advisor. So it's not just even that was great analysis for one deal.
Right.
But you're going to act as my advisor as we go through it.
Right. Because what happens in the industry is that a lot of people love to get a listing and they like to help you take off. Right. So we basically help you also land as well. Right. Otherwise, you don't have a comfortable journey. You have a lot of turbulence. You're going to lose a lot of money in the process. And if you basically sell your property here, good. Well, the goal is what you can do with what you have, and that's what we kind of focus on more so, the end goal, right? Right now, I know more or less any broker from who just graduated high school can give me more or less the evaluation of the property, and really, the market is the one who's going to dictate what the property is really worth. Right. So selling part is easy. It's helping you land and buy your next property is what challenges. And what I've experienced with my previous brokerage is people help you just take off. And even though they had internal access to a lot of these.
Explain to me what you mean. Okay, so I get the takeoff. So explain to me what you mean by the landing. How are you going to help me land?
Okay, very good. So let's say you have again, going back to the 10-unit apartment building in LA local here, right? And you're just sick and tired of, the restrictions or whatnot. And now let's say you want to have a better cash flow because the property you bought was in Sherman Oaks, for example, or West Hollywood.
And those are expensive areas. So maybe that's appreciated some over time.
Exactly. And now let's say, you're kind of at an age where you want to just do an exchange and not be so hands-on for your next property, right? So what I do and my team and my partner, what we focus on is that, of course, we're gonna not leave $1 on the table for the property we're selling for you. So now we're gonna sell that property for you. Now that helps you take off.
Right.
Now we're in the air. Okay, now suspense is on because when you do a 1031 exchange, you're in a very limited time, right?
Sure.
To identify your next property. Otherwise, you pay a immense amount of capital gains tax.
One of the things I look to is what's the economic engine? So, I talked to, I had a chat with a very smart investor, a billionaire who had cashed out and in the, I don't know when, 90s or, had made all of his money in the suburbs and cashed out and then said, you know what, I'm only going right into the 24-hour cities, the really booming cities, because younger people want to live closer into the central area and they will pay premiums that even the market doesn't yet understand.
100% true.
And when I looked at, okay, so what are the real 24-hour cities? There aren't that many. And what I figured out was that a proxy for the 24-hour city is you now go to a city that's not a 24-hour city. Like, for example, you know Indianapolis, I do not, but I know Pittsburgh, which is where I'm originally from. Pittsburgh is certainly not what this billionaire would consider a 24-hour city. But if you go right in the city center, you're next door to major regional hospitals, like huge hospital. It doesn't just service Pittsburgh, it services the whole region. And then also giant universities like University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon that don't just service Pittsburgh, but service the whole region, or for Carnegie Mellon as a national university. So in that one pocket inside a city that's not a 24-hour city, you really get the activity like a 24-hour city. And that's your real economic engine. And you can you get as close as you can. Same thing, right? If I were trying to buy value, you go right in the center of that, you pay top dollar, but, get as close as you can to that without being right inside of it to get that value.
You hit it right on the nail.
So you mentioned 1031 exchange. A lot of people who listen to this podcast know 1031 exchange, but give me a rundown of 1031 exchange and why should I use it? What does it look like?
Okay, very good. So in regards to 1031 exchange, it could get very complicated. Again, depending on who you're working with, right?
Sure.
Again, I would work, if you're going to be doing an exchange on a property, you need to be working with a professional. There's no questions about that. So that's one.
Because there are tax implications. If you don't hit all the boxes, then the IRS could undo the exchange.
That's right. And when I say professionals, I'm not saying, okay, buy and sell through your relative.
Right.
Because especially being in Los Angeles, everybody has a real estate license. So that, so you got to be very careful. So a 1031 exchange, basically, you have a property that was already producing money. And now if you were to go sell it, you got to pay a lot of tax on that. It's called capital gains tax, right?
Sure.
So,
and to take it very, very basic, like super basic, let's just say we bought the property for $1 million. We put $200,000 into it. Now my tax basis is 1.2 million.
Okay.
And it's appreciated over time. Now let's say it's been 10 years later. Now it's worth $2 million. I mean, this is just very basic math.
Yeah.
So if I go to sell that property, my tax basis, not including depreciation, we'll leave that on the side. But my tax basis without depreciation would be 1.2, $800,000 profit. Now I have to pay taxes on the $800,000.
Yep. Unless you buy another income producing property.
Right. So this is a like kind exchange, which is an element of 1031.
It cannot be land, for example. I want to go buy land so I can develop on it.
Right.
It doesn't work.
That's not like kind. That's one of the important elements.
So you can buy from an apartment building, you can buy a Starbucks, which produces, or not the Starbucks itself, but a single tenant, I should say.
Right.
Or another apartment building or an office building
because these are at least income producing real estate.
That's right.
Okay.
So you buy that income producing real estate, and then Uncle Sam basically charges you no tax.
Right.
So you get zero tax. The way I always looked at it is that who's gonna charge you no interest on your money?
Right. That's right.
Right.
Because eventually you will pay tax, but it's not until the end of the game. And again, to put that back into real numbers that are understandable. In the example that I used, you sold me a great property. It was a value add, which we love. You sold me the property. You got the property for me. I paid $1 million. You're like, hey, Paul, this is what you need to do to fix it up and get the rents up and all that kind of stuff. That cost me $200,000. Now I'm into it for 1.2 million. We've got the rents up. Okay, it doesn't even have to be 10 years, right? It can't be 1 year because that's the other thing is it has to be long term. So we should at least be 2 years. And so it can't be very short term. It can't be a flip. So it's got to be like kind exchange, which you explained already, and it can't be a flip because you have to hold it for a period of time. So let's just say, buy the place, $1 million. You tell me what needs to be fixed up. I fix it up. Now we're at 1.2 million, and and the value of the property has gone up significantly. And now we're at $2 million.
Right.
So I now want to upgrade. And if I sell the property, okay, I still have that 1.2 million in basis, but I'm going to have to pay taxes on the 800,000, which is going to reduce my investable amount when we go into the next one.
That's right.
But if we go into 1031 exchange, we can use we'll get our CPA, or I could drop it in the show notes. Like we could do all the math for you about, exactly how much you would have left. But let's just say for sure, it's not going to be $2 million.
Right.
It's going to be 2 million less the taxes you pay on the 800,000. And so let's just say it's $1.6 million or $1.7 million you're working with. Now we've got $1.7 million to invest instead of 2 million.
That's right.
So it's like interest-free money because now I'm investing that whole 2 million into the next property.
That's right. When did you ever think the government could help us instead? So
yeah, that's right.
So this is great. That's what you can do. Yeah.
Do you know you have to identify a property in a certain amount of time, and then you have to close it in another amount of time?
Right. So you have 45 days. The day that you close on your current property.
Correct.
Let's say I'm selling this 10-unit property, as you were mentioning earlier, we were talking about. So you close on that property. That day, the time starts clicking.
Right.
So it's going to be 45 days.
To identify.
Right. And then on the 45th day, you must have, with the accommodator involved, right?
Right.
The money cannot hit your bank. It has to be with an accommodator, a 1031 exchange professional. So the money is there, and now that gets transferred over to your next property, right?
Right, that's right.
So you have that to close on your up more than 45 days. I think it's like 135 days or something like that.
I think it's a total of 180 days.
Exactly.
So it would be like 180 and you're taking the 45 out.
That's correct.
It's a total of 180. Yeah.
That's correct. So that's a timeline.
Right. Okay. So we did a quick fact check, and we're both right. Because it's 180 days from the beginning, and you were taking out the 45 days to identify. So
Correct.
you say, hey, this is the property we want. Now, obviously, if I get ready to sell my property, we should be looking already in advance. That's what a great realtor is going to be
so
doing.
you should be looking the day the contingencies are removed on your down leg.
Right.
The property that you're selling, your own property that you're selling, the day you remove all the contingencies, or the buyer for your property removes their contingencies on your property, that is the day you started looking for your new property.
I love it. Okay, this is great advice.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. First of all, we covered a value add, also where to look to get appreciation and cash flow, which is very helpful, and then also the use of a 1031. So it's been really amazing, and I appreciate your time and expertise.
Pleasure. Likewise.
All right, awesome.